Welcome, everybody, to the next episode of NFL Central. Today, as you can tell by the title, I'm only going to be focusing on one thing, and that thing today is Baker Mayfield. Now, this is pretty much a rebuttal to Colin Cowherd's whole existence, since he seems to be very much against Baker Mayfield. He said in a recent segment on his show that this game coming up against the Tennessee Titans, Week 13, is the make or break game for Baker Mayfield's career. He says if he plays bad, then the Cleveland Browns will move off of him. A very ignorant statement, of course. And I mean, I listen to Cowherd almost every day, and I listen to Skip and Shannon every day, and I listen to Strong Opinion Sports almost every day, just to kind of try to get all opinions and see where they all stand on a bunch of football issues. And Colin Cowherd, I usually disagree with the most, him or Shannon Sharp. But on Baker Mayfield especially, I disagree with Colin Cowherd. He does not seem to want to acknowledge any of the good things that Baker Mayfield does, because coming into the 2018 draft, he was very much against Baker Mayfield. Didn't think he should be a first-round pick. Now, coming into the 2018 draft, I was a big fan of Baker Mayfield. I thought then that he was the best prospect in the 2010s coming into the draft. I was very high on Baker Mayfield. I still am very high on Baker Mayfield. I obviously acknowledge that Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback right now, but anything could change. Literally anything can change. I still support and have faith in Baker Mayfield. I trust Baker Mayfield. I believe in Baker Mayfield. But let's get right into it. We're going to go over every one of his games, and we're going to see exactly why Colin Cowherd is wrong about Baker Mayfield, and I am right about Baker Mayfield. If you go into Game 1, Baker Mayfield played terribly. He threw 1 touchdown and 1 interception, 189 yards passing. This was versus the Ravens. Now, the Ravens were coming off a 14-2 season. They were a well-put-together team with a quarterback who was just the MVP the last year. Now, he has regressed this year, but he started off the year very strong. Lamar Jackson is, of course, who I'm referring to. This was not a really fair game for the Browns to start out. Ravens are a very good team, especially at the beginning of the year. Again, like I said, they've regressed, but they started out strong. They had an experienced head coach, a quarterback coming off an MVP year, and the Cleveland Browns, Baker Mayfield's confidence was down because the last year Baker Mayfield did not play well. And much to Colin Cowherd's chagrin, it's actually not Baker Mayfield's fault. It was Freddie Kitchens' fault, the coach that got fired from Cleveland. Terrible play calls. He would literally do run, play action deep ball. That's not going to work, and he did that every time. It'll work sometimes, of course, but on third down when it's about 3rd and 8, everybody knows you're going to pass, so the play-action pass doesn't really do much. Now, as I was saying, though, Baker Mayfield was coming off a bad year. 22 touchdowns, 21 picks. Baker Mayfield actually finished 2019 very well, I thought. And I can go into that another video later, or even later in this video. But I'm sidetracking. This game was not fair. There was a new coach for Cleveland, new system. Baker Mayfield was not yet comfortable. Cleveland was put in a bad decision. It's obvious. They lost this game. They only put up 3 points, and the Ravens put up over 30. Baker Mayfield did not play well, but it's not necessarily his fault. Some of it is on him, of course, but it's Cleveland. They had a new coach, new system. This man has never... Kevin Stefanski, the Browns head coach, had never been a head coach before. And Baker Mayfield, this was his first game under this new head coach, coming off of a COVID offseason where there was, no minicamp, no preseason. It's not going to be perfect. And they were playing against a team that was doing very well the year before and very confident coming into this game. Going to more of the analytics of this game, Baker Mayfield threw 39 times, and when you have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt in your backfield, that's too many times. If you become one-dimensional like that with the Ravens' good DBs, then that's not going to work. And it's actually it actually shows that Baker Mayfield is a good decision-maker, that he only threw 1 interception. Honestly, it's not as bad as it looked. It is, but it's not as bad for Baker Mayfield as it looked. We jump into game 2, vastly different. He was playing the Bengals, and Joe Burrow. He was playing Joe Burrow. Baker threw 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. Now, Baker Mayfield's stat line does not sound very good, but if you watch this game, you know he played well. He had 1 bad pass, and that was his interception. He tried to force a ball in the end zone to put the game away, which was not smart. I also think it was partly because he was trying to force the ball to Odell Beckham, and I will get into that later in the video. Odell Beckham's adverse effect on Baker Mayfield and his career. But he was trying to force the ball to Odell, and it got intercepted. But the rest of that game was phenomenal. He played well, and they put him in situations that he's comfortable with. Baker Mayfield plays the best off of play action and rollouts. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Wilson, but you just said earlier that the reason that the Browns head coach of last year, Freddie Kitchens, was bad was because he called play action all the time. Yes, Baker Mayfield is good at play action, but Freddie Kitchens called that on third down more than any coach in the league last year. You can't do it every time. You have to expose your quarterback to other things. Even if he is good at that one thing, you can't overuse it. So, Kevin Stefanski against the Bengals this year used it well. He didn't overuse it and put Baker Mayfield in situations that he could succeed, not situations that he couldn't succeed. Baker Mayfield was also very efficient from the pocket, and he was also helped by a really good running game. It was a really good bounce-back game to build some of his confidence back. And I remember something big happening in the interviews after he won this game. He was asked how he felt the morning that he got up. This was obviously referring to something that Baker Mayfield said his rookie year was, he said, "I woke up feeling dangerous." Now this phrase was kind of indicative of Baker Mayfield's whole persona his first 2 years. He was overly confident, overly talkative, trash talk too much, very cocky player, just very, 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 very arrogant. And what he did is he said, "I'm done with that." When he was asked that question, how did you wake up? How did you feel when you woke up this morning? He said, "I'm done with that. I'm just going to play ball." That was a phenomenal answer. It was great to do what he just did. I very much respected that he is learning from his past mistakes, which is what you want from a young quarterback. You want them to learn from their mistakes in the past. And I will get into more of Baker's, air quotes, off-the-field issues after I go through all these games. Game 3, he played Washington. Now, he threw 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 156 yards. Contrary to the stat line, this is actually a phenomenal game for Baker Mayfield. Colin Cowherd loves to knock on Baker Mayfield because he never plays well against the pass rush, he says. A good pass rush, and Baker Mayfield falls apart. Okay, Washington has a great pass rush. Chase Young, they have all first-round picks on their defensive line, and yet Baker Mayfield played a very good game. The only reason his yardage wasn't up was because, again, they have 2 great running backs. Now, the biggest thing about this stat line is that he did not throw any interceptions. And what Colin Cowherd always likes to say is that Baker Mayfield can't play well under pressure, and he'll make mistakes and throw interceptions because that's Baker Mayfield's big problem. Well, you know what? He's playing against one of the best defensive lines in the league, and he didn't throw an interception. Played a great game and won the game. So I don't know what else to say. Now I have to look at this from you have to acknowledge. Yes, Baker Mayfield does not play the best under pressure, but what quarterback does? The greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady, does not play well under pressure. Nobody does. And Baker Mayfield is only in year 3. You've got to give him a break for not being able to deal with pressure well. And he played good against pressure here. So you've got to lay off a little bit. All you Baker Mayfield haters out there, you've got to lay off a little bit. You've got to give him time. There was a time in the NFL where we actually gave quarterbacks time to build. And Baker Mayfield is working on it. He's building he's building what he's going to become, and he's going to become great. But you have to give it time. And he even played well in this game, is what I'm saying. Moving on to game 4. This was against the Cowboys. Now, Baker Mayfield played a phenomenal 3 quarters, and then his fourth quarter was kind of hit or miss. He threw 2 touchdowns and no interceptions for 165 yards versus the Cowboys. Again, yardage is down because they have the best backfield in the league, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Now, this game was good, not great, because he missed on the deep balls to Odell. And again, I could blame that on Odell, but it was just it was inaccurate throws. You've got to hit those. So his fourth quarter was a little shoddy. The Cowboys almost made a comeback, but they didn't. The Browns came away with the win. That's all that really matters. And Baker Mayfield played a good, not great game. He just has to hit those deep balls, and he does. They're hit or miss. In that game, Baker Mayfield is a very accurate quarterback who's dealing with some accuracy issues the last 2 years because of mechanics have fallen apart due to pressure and probably lack of confidence. And I'll get into that later in the video. But a good game from Baker Mayfield. Again, no interceptions. Game 5 against the Colts. He threw 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 247 yards. He threw the ball more in this game because the Colts were able to shut down the run game more. He threw 2 interceptions, again, to Colin Cowherd, not because he threw the ball more. It was because he hurt his ribs and decided that he was going to tough it out and stay in. Props to Baker Mayfield. They won the game. He threw 2 interceptions because his ribs were screwed up. And you'll see how that affects the next game. When you go into game 6, he's playing the Steelers, which, again, need I remind you, are undefeated right now, still. 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 119 yards. He had bruised or cracked ribs. I can't ever get a definitive answer on which one it was, but his ribs were screwed up. He was pulled out of the game, not because of poor play, but because of his injury early in the game. And Kevin Stefanski admitted that he probably shouldn't have played him anyway. But Baker Mayfield did not play well because of his hurt ribs. It's really hard to throw when your ribs are cracked or bruised. It goes into your throwing motion. Game 7, he was healthy, and he was playing against the Cincinnati Bengals. And this game was it might be his career game. He started off with throwing an interception on the first play, and in my mind, I was very disappointed. I was like, oh, no. This is going to be another rough game, isn't it? No. After that, he threw 5 straight incompletions, and I was really worried. And then after that, he threw 21 straight completions and 5 touchdowns. He went 22 for 23 in his last 23 pass attempts, and the only incompletion was a spiked ball. He won the game on a final drive of 2 monster passes that were very accurate and very deep. It was a very clutch performance and showed just how great Baker Mayfield can be. Also, just to point out, Odell Beckham Jr. was injured in this game. And after he got injured, Baker Mayfield went 22 for 23 and 5 touchdowns. And again, I will get into more of how Odell does not help Baker later. But you cannot deny the statistics. Baker plays better without Odell. And this game shows exactly what Baker Mayfield can be. Now, the next game was against the the Las Vegas Raiders. He threw 0 touchdowns and 0 interceptions for 122 yards. This may not sound like a great game, and it wasn't a great game. It was a very mediocre game, but it was the beginning of something very, very good. As you can tell, again, I said no interceptions. They lost this game 16-6. You can really blame that on the weather. Nothing was going right for really either team. Raiders came away with the win. Next week was the bye week, and this really shows why Kevin Stefanski and Baker Mayfield are going to work out in Cleveland and why they're both going to be great. Because I'll agree with Colin Cowherd here. Colin Cowherd always says people who come off good after bye weeks, they're going to be the great ones. And guess what? The Browns came off the bye week and came against the Texans. Baker Mayfield threw again 0 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, 132 yards. And the reason that they didn't pass a lot in this game was because, number one, they have a great, actually this is really number two. They have a great rushing game. But the big reason of why they didn't throw it a lot was because of the weather. Starting in against the Raiders to the Texans, and then the next week against the Eagles, that is some of the worst weather Cleveland has seen in decades. It was terrible weather. You can't throw in that weather. Nobody can catch in that weather. It was terrible weather, and they had to run the ball. And again, Baker Mayfield made the throws that he needed to make against the Texans. Also, 0 interceptions in that type of weather. He's taking care of the ball. He also had great leadership in that game. At the end of the game, he told Nick Chubb to not score if he was able to score, because there was less than a minute left, and he just wanted to end the game. They were up 10-7, and he just wanted to win the game and didn't want to give the other team any shot. And so he gave up scoring more points and making his team look better to do the responsible thing and the good thing to win the game. And Nick Chubb broke a big run and decided not to score, and they need the ball, and they won the game. Very responsible, very good leadership by Baker Mayfield. His awareness there was phenomenal. We go into Game 10. He had 0 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, 204 yards versus the Eagles in terrible weather. 200 yards, 0 interceptions in terrible weather. This was great. He played very well. Stat line on these last 3 games do not jump out at you. Of course they don't, because it was some of the worst weather Cleveland has seen in decades. But Baker Mayfield did exactly what he needed to do, hit the throws that he needed to hit, contrary to Colin Cowherd's favorite guy, Carson Wentz, who leads the league in interceptions, which he loves to jump on Baker Mayfield for interceptions, but somehow he doesn't seem to jump on Carson Wentz for it. Carson Wentz leads the league in interceptions, only has 1 more touchdown than he does interceptions, and threw 2 in this game. Carson Wentz was terrible in this game. He didn't know how to handle the weather, and he plays in Philly. He should know how to play in crappy weather, but he couldn't. But guess who could? Baker Mayfield. Now, we go to Game 11. This game sounds better than it actually was. There was some high highs and some low lows. Now, actually, there was really only 1 low, but it was very glaring. Baker Mayfield threw for 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, 258 yards, and this was against the Jaguars. This game was closer than it should have been, but the Jaguars' backup quarterback Mike Glennon played very well. It was a good game overall, but Baker Mayfield could have had 3 touchdowns, but he missed 2 consecutive passes in the red zone. Both of them he should have hit, and I'll show them here. He should have hit them, but he missed them. That can't happen. Baker Mayfield needs to hit these passes. And I'm going to go into this more later. His mechanics fell apart, and he didn't make a good throw. He's got to figure that out. There are things that Baker Mayfield can improve on. But again, like I said, he is a third-year quarterback who is still playing very well and just needs to figure some stuff out. And he will figure it out. He's got a great coach. Kevin Stefanski is going to be a great coach. I think he should win Coach of the Year. And that is all the games that he's played. And now before I get into what I think he is going to do against the Titans, I'm going to go back and let's talk about his past, his college experience, his rookie year, and why Colin Cowherd doesn't like him, his ups and downs. Let's just talk about his past, and we'll figure out why people think of Baker Mayfield the way they do, and why I think Baker Mayfield is going to be a phenomenal quarterback if given proper coaching. Talk about Baker Mayfield, you have to go back to his high school days. He wasn't highly recruited out of high school because he was undersized. He took this personally, and having a chip on his shoulder and wanting to prove the doubters wrong was something that will define his entire career. He decided to walk on to Texas Tech. Now, Cliff Kingsbury was the coach there. He is the current coach of the Arizona Cardinals and a pioneer with the spread offense. Now, Baker Mayfield walked on and won the starting job against the other freshman quarterback, Davis Webb. Baker Mayfield started out 7-0, but got injured in his 8th game. Now, even when Baker Mayfield got healthy, Coach Kingsbury still didn't put him in and decided to roll with Davis Webb for the rest of the year. This is a decision that I'm sure Cliff Kingsbury regrets even to this day, because after Mayfield was lost, they only won one more game after he stopped starting. This is crazy. Baker Mayfield is a winner, obviously. Now, because Baker Mayfield wasn't going to be able to get the start, he decided to transfer to his dream school, Oklahoma. Now, because of NCAA rules, Baker Mayfield couldn't tell the Oklahoma coach that he was transferring there, so the Oklahoma coach was very, very shocked when he found out that Baker Mayfield was transferring there. Now, because of NCAA rules, Baker Mayfield would have to sit out a year if he made it to the OU roster, and Baker Mayfield did make it to the OU roster in 2014. But like I said, he had to sit out a year because of the NCAA. Now, Baker Mayfield, while sitting out, still got to practice with OU, and he got to practice against that defense every day. He worked really hard because he knew he was better than the quarterbacks in the quarterback room at OU, and he knew when he finally got his opportunity, he wanted to start, and so he worked his butt off to get there. In 2014, the year Baker Mayfield didn't play, Oklahoma went 8-5. Now, in 2015, Baker Mayfield won the starting job after walking on yet again. He threw 36 touchdowns and 7 interceptions in that year, and he led the Oklahoma Sooners to an 11-2 record. He got to the college football playoff, but lost in the semifinals to Clemson. Then we go into 2016. He started again, of course, and this year he threw 40 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. They went 11-2 again. Their second loss came to Ohio State, and this is another loss that Baker Mayfield took very personally and put a big chip on his shoulder and knew that he was not going to let he was not going to let Ohio State beat him again. And if you don't know, Ohio State and Oklahoma are big rivals. Also that year, Baker Mayfield had a game against Patrick Mahomes and the Texas Tech Red Raiders, his old college team. Baker Mayfield threw for 7 touchdowns and 500-plus yards in this game, in a revenge game that they won 66-59. In 2017, Baker Mayfield threw 43 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. This was Baker Mayfield's senior year and definitely his best. 43 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. That is crazy, unbelievable stats. Every year of his college career, he improved his stats. And every year he improved his play. The Oklahoma Sooners also went 12-2 this year, and they went to the college football playoff again and lost in the semifinals to UGA. Now, I told you to remember the Ohio State loss from last year. Well, Baker Mayfield absolutely obliterated Ohio State this year, getting his revenge game and having a chip on his shoulder. And like I said, Baker Mayfield has always played with a chip on his shoulder. He's always had the walk-on mentality. Being told you're undersized your whole college football career and now your whole NFL career will make you have a chip on your shoulder, and it motivates him and it makes him play better, obviously. Now, there were some bumps in the road in college, and this is why some people like Colin Cowherd don't like him. Now, he had one thing in a Kansas State game. I'm fairly certain it was against Kansas or Kansas State. Baker Mayfield was getting into a screaming match with a player, and after they scored, he grabbed his crotch, like the derogatory crotch grab symbol, kind of like a middle finger. That was not good. The thing that really puts people over the edge, though, is that Baker Mayfield had a public drunkenness incident where he was very, very drunk and was walking down a street, and the police just asked him some questions, and Baker Mayfield decided it was going to be a good idea to run, and then the cops ran after him because obviously he's running and tackled him. Baker Mayfield didn't do anything wrong, but he was drunk, so he thought he was in trouble, so he ran. Not a good look. he also had something that some people don't like, some people do like. I don't mind it. I think it was fine. This thing is he planted the flag after he beat Ohio State in the middle of their stadium. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's fine. It was intense. He planted an Oklahoma flag in the middle of Ohio State's field. I don't really care. That's fine. I think Ohio State fans just get mad about it because, they don't like that, but whatever. I don't like the crotch grab and the public drunkenness, though. That wasn't good. Another thing that I personally didn't like that I haven't heard a lot talked about is when he was playing UGA in the college football semifinals. They had a huge lead during that game, and at one point you could see him saying, "It's over," which you never say that in a football game. That was not smart. But all of these things put together, a lot of people started comparing him to Johnny Manziel, which was just not warranted. Johnny Manziel had an alcohol problem, he was bipolar, had a drug problem, and just could not take coaching and could not get better. Baker Mayfield was not like this. Baker Mayfield had never actually been in trouble. Baker Mayfield never been in trouble with the law. Baker Mayfield was just an intense person who talked too much. Now, going into the 2018 NFL Draft, he was far and away the best quarterback from that class. But for some reason, people didn't like it. Well, actually, you know the reason. It's because of the, air quotes, off-the-field issues and his size. People don't like that he's under 6'1". Now, going into the draft process, despite all the off-the-field issues and Colin Cowherd saying he was undraftable, Baker somehow won over the Browns organization who held the first pick, and the Browns took him with the first pick because I'm sure they saw that he was the best. But going into that draft, almost all of the NFL analysts rated the 5 quarterbacks who were going to go in the first round that year, which were Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Baker Mayfield. They rated Baker Mayfield 5th or 6th. 4th, 5th, or 6th. Usually at the bottom rung, which is crazy, especially when you listen to these guys' college stats. Sam Darnold, who was thought to be the best quarterback in this draft that everybody thought the Browns should take, threw 26 touchdowns his last year in college and 13 interceptions. That doesn't sound like best quarterback material to me. He has turnover issues in college, and if you have turnover issues in college, you're going to have them in the NFL. And I know what you're thinking. Well, listen, Baker Mayfield has turnover issues in the NFL. Yes, but he didn't have them in college, which means he has the potential to fix that issue in the NFL. It's much harder to fix an issue that you have struggled with in college and in the pros, like Sam Darnold. Baker Mayfield was a very good decision maker in college and is a good decision maker now. There are many other outside factors that factor into all of his interceptions, and some of them are his decision making, but he's already getting better. You can tell that this year, 4 straight games with no picks. Sam Darnold has made no strides with that, and you could see that also in his last year of college. The next quarterback on everybody's list behind Sam Darnold was Josh Rosen. His last year was 26 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Now, he was supposedly the, air quotes, most NFL ready out of this class. Okay, well, I'm going to get to his NFL stats later, and you'll see that they completely missed on that. I remember during the draft process, I thought Josh Rosen was going to be the biggest NFL bust out of this class, and I ended up being right. You will be shocked if you don't already know when you hear his stats for the NFL, after all the NFL analysts said he was the most NFL ready. Josh Allen was thought to be the 3rd or 4th best quarterback. Now, in college, he threw 16 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Now, thankfully, most NFL analysts realized that this stat line was terrible, but they liked his physical ability the best. He's 6'5", over 200 pounds, rocket arm, and fast. People liked his potential better than Baker's because, he's bigger and faster and has a bigger arm. People even say that Josh Allen might have a bigger arm than Patrick Mahomes. That's a topic for a different time. But he was supposedly the most talented quarterback in the draft. Well, when you hear his stats, he hasn't exactly lived up to the most talented hype. Now, Josh Allen, out of Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen is probably the best out of those four in the NFL, and he keeps getting better as well. I just don't think he's as good as Baker. Now, Lamar Jackson, in his last year in college, he threw for 27 touchdowns and 10 interceptions with 18 rushing TDs. Now, people said that Lamar Jackson had the best intangibles. Now, when you hear an NFL analyst or scout say this person has the best intangibles, that just means that they like what they see, but they don't really know why. People liked Lamar Jackson's physical ability. He was fast, he ran the ball. But what they don't understand is that works really well in college. It doesn't translate for more than a year in the NFL. And that's why you see Lamar regressing right now. But I'll get into that a little bit more later. This isn't about Lamar. Now, we look at Baker Mayfield. I already told you his college stats. Far and away better than these guys, his other competition. Like, that's crazy. The Browns made the right pick when they took Mayfield. Unfortunately, all the NFL analysts thought otherwise, but they actually made the right pick, which is shocking. But it's good for the Browns. Now, in 2018, the Browns, the last year in 2017, went 0-16. So Baker Mayfield was also going into the worst situation possible. Now, in 2018, Baker Mayfield's rookie year, Baker Mayfield threw 27 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. The 27 touchdowns was a record touchdown number for a rookie quarterback on the Browns, who went 0-16 the year before. That is unbelievable. That is fantastic. Now, Baker Mayfield took the Browns to a 7-8-1 record. He got them their first win against the Jets in Week 3, and he didn't even start the first two games. I can't imagine. Their record might have been 9-6-1 or 8-7-1 if he would have started the first two games. But their coach, Hugh Jackson, didn't think that was a good idea, and he actually got fired in the middle of the season, thank goodness, because he was a terrible coach, and replaced by Greg Williams, who, in my opinion, should still be the Browns head coach, because he also led the Browns to this 7-8-1 record. But you'll see what kind of falls apart and what happens with him. Now, Baker Mayfield obviously played awesome, but he also did throw too many picks. 14 interceptions is too many picks, but he was a rookie, and rookies make mistakes. The biggest problem with Baker was that he was way too cocky. He trash-talked and called out the media all the time. You can't do that. Don't listen to the media. Every NFL quarterback seems to know this now. You can't really, except for Lamar Jackson. Actually, Lamar Jackson's been calling out the media and his team lately. But at this time, Baker Mayfield was a rookie and was calling out the media and trash-talking. You can't do that. You've got to keep your mouth shut as a QB. He didn't know this at that time. Now, one of the most famous things he said was, "I woke up feeling dangerous." He said that after he beat the Falcons, or during the game when he was beating the Falcons. This became kind of his catchphrase, and when he was playing good, it was great. But as you'll see in the next year, he didn't play as well, and people kind of threw that in his face. And it just seemed way too arrogant for not great play. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Baker Mayfield had one of the best rookie QB performances ever in an NFL season. Now, when we're going into 2019, the Browns brought in Odell Beckham Jr. This was thought to be a phenomenal get. Everybody thought that this was going to put the Browns over into playoff contention because everybody was excited for what the Browns did the year before. Now, what they overlooked was that the Browns still didn't fix their terrible offensive line and still had a lot of holes on their defense. And also, the biggest problem was everybody knew that Baker Mayfield had a big personality. Everybody knew he was cocky and arrogant. And they had Jarvis Landry, who was also cocky and arrogant, and they decided to bring in Odell Beckham Jr., who was also cocky and arrogant. That is a lot of personalities, and that is that is something that an experienced head coach needs to deal with. And Greg Williams was an experienced coach, but he was the interim head coach. And the Browns decided to not hire him and decided to hire the Browns offensive coordinator that Baker Mayfield worked so well with the year before, who had never had any head coaching experience. His name was Freddie Kitchens. No head coaching experience before, and now had to take over a team with this many personalities, with this much media pressure on them. Not a recipe for success. Baker Mayfield also was probably too confident from the year before. People were calling him, the next Patrick Mahomes. This too lofty of expectations, and when people start telling you how great you are, you start to believe it, and you can't believe that as an NFL quarterback. You always have to be getting better, and I don't think he worked as hard as he should have. He gained bad weight. You could tell he was pudgy in this year. It didn't look like it was going to be that great. And it wasn't. Baker Mayfield threw 22 touchdowns on 21 interceptions this year. Now, there are about 4 reasons, maybe 5, we'll see, of why this happened. Baker Mayfield's poor play, we're going to get into, there's only one of them that is his fault. He was trying to play Superman. He was not making good decisions because he thought he had to pull the Brett Favre, which he's been compared to in the past. He thought he had to make every play into something, even if it was out of nothing. And if it wasn't there, he tried to force it because, I think it was because he was arrogant and like in a part of it, he thought he was arrogant and would be able to do it. Thought his arm was better than it actually was. I think he also really, really, really wanted to win and wanted to lift this franchise. Now, the other 3, not Baker Mayfield's fault. Part of the reason he had to play Superman was because his O-line, like I said earlier, was terrible. They didn't fix it. Everybody had really high expectations for the Browns because of the skill positions, but they didn't take into account the most important thing, which is the line. Baker Mayfield got hit a lot. A way to hurt a young quarterback's confidence is to get him hit, and that's what they did. They let him get hit. Terrible offensive line. Also, Freddie Kitchens' coaching was terrible. I said this earlier in the video. He would call run, play action religiously almost every time. He was not a good play caller. He was not able to handle the big personalities. He didn't know to tell Baker to shut up. And I'll get into that later. Baker's talking. It got worse this year. He did not know how to handle it. And I guess the next reason of Baker's turnovers it goes into play calling, but I'll count it as another reason. They got OBJ, and, they were like, well, you know what? We've got to use him because we got him. And so they tried to get Baker Mayfield to force the ball to Odell Beckham, but you can't force chemistry. And so Baker Mayfield's trying to force the ball to Odell when they don't really have good chemistry. And I said this early in the video, Baker Mayfield plays better without Odell. Odell and Baker just didn't click. It just didn't work out. They should have cut their losses after last year, but they didn't, but it's fine. It just didn't work out, but you shouldn't have Baker force the ball to Odell. That caused a lot of interceptions. And now, we also have to talk about Baker talking too much. He called out his critics. Can't do that. A lot of quarterbacks get criticized. This year, Tom Brady's getting criticized a lot, and he's just taking the blame and being like, I've got to get better. Baker Mayfield didn't do that. He called them out. He made excuses. Can't do that. He even called out, local media, Browns media. He yelled at them. You cannot do that. He has to keep his mouth shut. And so it made him seem very unlikable. And unfortunately, that's how it was. And I think Baker hit rock bottom here because he was not able to put on the blinders and just focus on football. And Baker Mayfield, it all just was a perfect storm of hell for him. And I think he hit rock bottom. So, despite all of that, Baker Mayfield actually finished the year fairly well. Despite his stat line, he did fairly well. And I'm going to show you this clip against the first time they played the Steelers. It was the infamous game where Myles Garrett tried to hit Mason Rudolph on the head with his helmet. I'm sure you know that. I'm going to show you this play. This is when I knew that Baker Mayfield was going to be okay. Watch this clip. As you can see, this This was a very, 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 very good play. The way he moves in the pocket and then throws that high point ball where only his receiver can catch it. Really great play. And he didn't even have any support from his team the rest of the year, but those were the type of plays that I saw from him the next few weeks into the end of the season that I was like, okay, he's going to be fine. He just has nothing around him. It's going to be okay. Now, we go into the 2020 offseason, and the Browns this past year in 2019 went 6-10. Worse than the year they did before, which was 7-8-1. They should have done better. Now, I was still worried about Baker Mayfield calling out the critics. I knew his play was going to be better, but I didn't know how he was going to react to all the hate he was going to get this offseason. And he handled it perfectly. This offseason, he kept his head down. Analysts tried to coax him into talking trash, but they still couldn't get him to do it. He'd finally figured out what he needed to do, and he had improved, and that's what you want to see from a young quarterback. He had learned from his past mistakes of talking too much, and now he doesn't. He keeps his mouth shut, like I told you in the Bengals game, where he answered the questions the right way. He didn't talk about how he woke up feeling dangerous. He said, that's over with. I'm just ready to play ball. He is getting better in every single category, and that's what you want to see, and that's what I don't think Colin Cowherd understands. Baker Mayfield is getting better. Cowherd is just way too blinded by his hate for Baker Mayfield, and I think that's because he said Colin Cowherd said Baker was going to be bad, and now he's so desperately holding on to that narrative. He wants to be right so bad, and I think he's starting to realize that he's not going to be right. And now, I think, and so I told you earlier that I was going to talk about how the other quarterbacks in that draft class that everybody said was going to be better than Baker, how they're doing. I think Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback from that class, obviously, but I don't think this is a hot take. And a lot of you think it's probably a hot take because you're like, oh, there's Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Baker Mayfield is better than both of those guys, and I'll tell you why. I'll get to them last, though. First off, Sam Darnold. Let's look at his stats. Year 1, 17 touchdowns, 15 picks, 2,865 yards. It's not great, but rookie. He's a rookie, so you can kind of excuse it. Year 2, 19 touchdowns, 13 picks, 3,024 yards. Yay, he did better. But he was injured in both of those years, and now this year so far, he's 3 touchdowns and 8 picks, 1,242 yards. And he's also been injured this year as well. Now, I know what you're saying. He's playing for the terrible Jets. Okay, Baker Mayfield is probably playing for the most dysfunctional organization ever, maybe other than the Lions, the Cleveland Browns. It's not an excuse. Sam Darnold is not better than Baker Mayfield. Josh Rosen. Now, remember, he was thought to be the most NFL ready. In his first year, threw 11 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 2,278 yards. Oh, yeah, he was really NFL ready, I say sarcastically. Cardinals moved off of him after 1 year. Moved off to him. Traded him to the Dolphins, and then that year, he didn't even start all the games. He threw 1 touchdown and 5 interceptions, 567 yards that whole year. Yeah, not really NFL ready. He's now on the Buccaneers practice squad. First round pick in 2 years on the practice squad. Now, we get into Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, the other two probably most successful quarterbacks out of the class, out of those 4 that I've mentioned. In year 1, Josh Allen threw 10 touchdowns, 12 picks, 2,074 yards. Didn't play the whole year, got hurt in the middle. This was not a great rookie year, but he improved the next year. 20 touchdowns, 9 picks, 3,089 yards. That was a good improvement. And this year so far, he's 22 touchdowns, 8 picks, and 3,028 yards. This is good. But despite the stat line, he is so inconsistent. And I know you're thinking again, well, Wilson, isn't Baker Mayfield inconsistent? Yes. At the beginning of the year, Baker Mayfield was this inconsistent. Was inconsistent, but he was not this inconsistent. Josh Allen has really high highs and really low lows. Baker Mayfield, these past 6-7 weeks has been, 4 or 5 weeks has been very, very consistent. No interceptions. Baker Mayfield is figuring it out. I don't think Josh Allen's figured out how to be consistent yet. Now we go to Lamar Jackson, and this is the one that I know everybody disagrees with me on, but hear me out. Lamar Jackson is not as good as Baker Mayfield. Again, I know you disagree, but please hear me out. Year 1, 6 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 1,201 yards. Okay. It's fine. He rushed for a lot of yards too that year. Went to the playoffs, choked it away. Year 2, 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 3,127 yards. That's very good. And then this year so far, 15 touchdowns, 6 picks, 1,948 yards. That's not a good stat line. It's worse than it even sounds. Now, you look at those first 2 years, though, and you're like, but listen, those are awesome. They're really not. He was very, very lucky that he was able to run in those years, and that's why he was able to throw so many touchdowns, because the running opened up the pass game, and he was able to hit receivers wide open. But we don't know about Lamar Jackson is he's actually a very, very, very inaccurate passer, and it only takes about a year to a year and a half for people to figure out how to stop that. And so the MVP year's over. Lamar Jackson is probably I would bet almost anything that he's not going to reach that type of play ever again, because the NFL has figured him out. 15 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and 1,948 yards. He is very inaccurate, and it's starting to show because the running is not opening up the pass as well anymore. He can't hit receivers on the outside. We saw that in the playoff game last year. He's not throwing for any yards. He's trying to use his feet way too much, and when he tries to be a pocket passer, it goes to hell because he can't throw accurately. He can't really throw deep down the middle when it's in coverage. He has no deep ball. He always underthrows it or overthrows it. He's not that good of a quarterback. He was bailed out by his running ability the first year and a half. But the same thing that happened to Colin Kaepernick, the NFL figured him out. And I think this is the beginning of the end for Lamar Jackson, unfortunately. Now, back to Baker. Baker had a historic rookie year. He kept the Browns in playoff discussion for most of that year. And he did the best he could with those adverse circumstances. And it ended up being a learning experience for him with those adverse circumstances in 2019. And this year, all he has done is improved in every category since last year, and is on pace to make his first playoff appearance, and the first playoff experience for the Browns in over a decade. Now, he's got the Browns at 8-3. When was the last time you remember the Browns being thought of as a good team? Yeah, never. Baker Mayfield and Kevin Stefanski has done that. Baker Mayfield has been an integral part of that. He's their quarterback. All of the other quarterbacks in that draft class have been way more up and down than Baker. But Baker's problems have seemed worse than they actually are because they've been heightened and highlighted by a historically bad franchise. Darnold and Rosen did not live up to the expectations, although Darnold will probably get another shot, I'm guessing, with the Steelers if I had to bet. Josh Allen is working his way up to living to his expectations, but he's got to get more consistent. And Lamar is inaccurate and regressing with a better franchise, team, and coach than Baker has ever had. Baker is doing more with substantially less. Even though it doesn't seem like it now, you'll see in the future that he's doing more with substantially less. Lamar has been given everything. A great roster, a great coach, and a great franchise, and is losing control of it right now. So, that all leads me to the point of this entire video. Well, there's 2 points. I'm being a Baker Mayfield apologist. I'm telling you why he's going to be great. But also, I'm finally going to tell you how I think he's going to do against the Titans this week. And no, Colin Cowherd, I don't think that this is a make-or-break game for his career. Now, of course, now that I say all this, praising Baker Mayfield, Murphy's Law, or whatever it is, will probably now Baker will probably throw a bunch of interceptions, play bad. I'm just kidding. I believe in Baker Mayfield, so I'm going to stick to my guns. I think he's going to win this game. I think he's going to throw 3 touchdowns or more and 0 interceptions. And I think that the Browns are going to beat the Tennessee Titans. And I also think the Browns are going to go to the playoffs this year. So in conclusion, Baker Mayfield is a good QB right now. He's always been a good QB. And he is going to be a great QB very, very soon. Sooner than you might think. So I would be ready, for all you Baker Mayfield haters out there, get ready to eat your own words. He is constantly improving and is in the process of rising the Browns to contenders again. Get ready. Not this year, probably next year. So don't jump off the bandwagon just yet. Or actually, you should probably jump off the bandwagon because it'll motivate him even more and make it even better when he becomes great and you'll have to admit you were wrong. Thank you very much for listening. I would ask that you guys subscribe and comment down below on what you think. Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm wrong? And also, thank you again very, very much for listening to me talk about Baker Mayfield for probably over an hour. So I appreciate you guys, and I will see you soon.